Isabel pushed back her hood, removed her sunglasses, and searched the sky. She found no sign of the ravens. All 5 of the Belsnickles stood in the bluff, scanning the valley. The small township of Good Hope sprawled out below them. Darkness was slipping in fast beneath the dense, low-flying clouds. They all hoped the man in the truck hadn't gone far, all too aware that if the man had left the area, then there'd be little chance of finding him before Santa or his monsters did. Makwa gestured north, and they all looked that way. "You see them?" Vernon asked. Makwa jabbed his finger impatiently. He could speak English. All 3 of the Shawnee could, but doing so seemed to annoy them. Makwa referred to English as the ugly tongue. Isabel had given up on learning Shawnee. Figured if she couldn't pick it up after all these years, then she never would. So between the Indians' stubbornness and her lack of language skills, they were all, more often than not, reduced to grunts and pantomime. "Well, I don't see a thing," Vernon snapped. Isabel couldn't either. But that didn't mean the giant birds weren't out there. Makwa had been with Krampus a long time. Isabel guessed at least 400 years, and the longer you were around Krampus, the more his magic rubbed off. Makwa looked at them as though they were simple-minded, then took off down the trail, followed by the 2 brothers, Whippy and Nippy. Isabel and Vernon shrugged and followed. All 5 of them raced through the woods. There was no need to hide their faces in the growing darkness, and Isabel reveled in the winter wind blowing through her hair. Krampus's blood ran through their veins, increasing their strength and endurance noticeably. Isabel could sprint faster, leap further, and run endlessly without tiring. But his blood did more than that. It also opened their senses to the wilderness of the world. But his blood did more than that. It also opened their senses to the wildness of the world in a way no ordinary mortal could ever know. She could smell the spice of rotting leaves beneath the frost, the fish in the creek, could hear a family of squirrels nesting high above in the treetops, could only sense the pulse of life running beneath all things. Ancient forces, she thought, older than the very dirt, and when she ran like this, leaping and dashing through the woods like a deer, her heart and soul open to the spirit and the land, she found that she could almost forget all that has been stolen from her. They followed the creek beneath the highway, skirted a cluster of homes, then climbed up an embankment, coming out of the trees into a field behind the high school. The school looked the same to Isabel as it had when she'd attended 40 years ago. She stared at the dark windows and wondered if her son had gone there as well. Makwa held up his hand and they stopped. He pointed toward the dark clouds. This time Isabel made out the 2 specks circling above, about a mile away, near the elementary school, caught their distance. Makwa held up his hand and they stopped. He pointed toward the dark clouds. This time Isabel made out 2 specks circling about a mile away near the elementary school, caught their distant calls. Her heart sped up. He's still here. Isabel felt her hopes rise. This time, they knew the make of the man's truck, knew what he looked like. He wouldn't get away. Makwa shook his head, looking troubled. "What?" Isabel asked. "What's wrong now?" They call him Santa Claus. He must be near." The 2 brothers nodded their agreement. "Oh, wonderful. That's just wonderful," Vernon said, his voice edging toward hysteria. "What do we do now?" "We beat him there," Isabel stated. "That's all well and good, but what if he already has it? Then we take it from him," she said, not the least bit happy about it. And that was the end of it. They all knew what she meant. Krampus had given them a direct command. He possessed them. The same blood that gave them the ability to run like deer also dominated their will. If Krampus should demand they chew open their own wrists while humming a tune, they'd be powerless to do anything but. They'd be commanded They'd been commanded to bring back the sack at any cost, and so they'd expend their last breath trying, even if it meant going into the jaws of Santa's monsters to do it. "We're wasting time," Isabel said, and dashed away. The Belsnickles followed. She ran all out, and as she ran, she took note of the beauty around her. The 1,000 shades of blue and purple savored winter's twilight in its entire splendor, and as it fell across the mountains, knowing too well it may be her last.